The Conscious Conversation with Aleya. Welcome everybody. We do this every few months, once every 2 months, of a casual conversation, of looking at energy, answering questions about energy, and actually this conscious conversation is angled a little bit more at asking me questions about myself and how I perceive energy. So we are just going to be kind of clipping through some of the questions that have been coming through prior to the conversation starting. And I always like to call in guides just to create a safe space for the relay of information. Again, it's not really so much about huge energy shifts. You might still feel energy moving because in my world I'm always watching energy and talking about energy and looking at energy. So we call forth the Ascended Masters, our spiritual advisors, our spiritual family, to gather now around us in the higher realms, to hold a gentle and safe space as we open up to a conscious conversation about the world that we live in. So the very first question that I'm going to be looking at is somebody said, I really want to get a better understanding of how you see energy and how you experience it. For me, when I am perceiving energy, I actually feel it, I hear it, and sometimes I see it. For me, my greatest sense is more the feeling and the hearing. So it can come in as a combination, or it's just hearing, or it's just feeling. And my body is highly sensitive to energy as well, and so I'll get these empathic sensations of literally feeling another person's experience. I'll feel their headache, I'll feel their stomach ache, I'll feel their knee pain, I'll feel their emotion, whatever it might be. I might even feel and hear their thoughts. And after my enlightenment experience in 2001, that was a very disorienting experience to be walking around all the time, feeling other people's stuff. And so it took me, I almost want to say 10 years to figure out how to turn that radio dial on and to turn it off. And so whenever I go into a session, I always create a safe space. We're calling in the guides. We're calling in people from the future as ascended masters, the spiritual advisors, the angelic ones. We're creating a safe space. And once I feel that safe space, or sometimes I even hear the angelic choir coming around, or I'll hear the guides say, we're here, we're in the house. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're serious, but it's usually an indicator that I get, sometimes I get goosebumps, sometimes I'll feel like a little feather touch on my cheek. It is subtle. It's not something that is super, super obvious. If somebody wasn't very awake, wasn't very aware, wasn't looking for it, they'd miss it. And so I am tuning into this heightened sensitivity. And as I feel those guides coming in, I then start to turn on inside myself, allowing myself to open up to feel more of the empathic sensitivity, to connect with that individual at the level of their higher self, of whatever it is they're wanting to shift and release. So it's almost like putting my glasses on and turning my dials on. And I don't do anything technical. It's more about dropping into my heart and feeling into that place of compassion, non-attachment. I have no agenda. I have no expectations. I'm always almost moving into this place of the void, of total stillness, totally empty, totally blank, turning on, opening up. What am I going to get? What do I see? What do I feel? What do I hear? And then I'm inviting, while I'm doing that, I'm inviting my higher self to be connecting with their higher self, opening up to receive whatever appropriate information they're ready to look at, work on, shift, heal, or release. And then I can feel my higher self kind of moving around. The energy starts to shift. There might be like almost an expansion in my energy fields. My ears might have a little bit of pressure. My ears might pop. My eyes might water. So it's definitely a physical sensation, and then I'll actually physically hear ringing in the ears, or I'll hear that very quiet voice of, look at what happened when they were 5, or ask them about anger, or ask them if they had a traumatic incident at the age of 7. And so I'll actually hear that quietly, not the way that you would hear me talking out loud to you, but it's more of that still kind of wise guide voice coming in from the higher realms. But the only way to really get that, at least from my perspective and my experience, is to move into a really, really quiet space inside myself. And I'm moving into that divine line, that river of light on the front of my spine, so that I'm in that place of stillness, I'm in that Zen, quiet energy. And then I have the capacity, because I'm deeply connected in with myself, I have the capacity to deeply connect with the guides. So that's how I feel, see, perceive energy. There's another question of how do you discern energy that you're feeling versus empathically someone else's energy? So how do I know that what I'm feeling is mine compared to what I'm feeling is someone else's? I try to take a moment every day, usually in the morning, of sitting in a place of stillness and dropping into that core energy that's my essence, right on the front of the spine, that tube of light. And when I'm in that place, I tune into the energy that's there. Maybe it's peaceful, maybe it's excited, maybe it's joyful, maybe it's contemplative. I kind of get a little reference point for what's going on deep inside me. And then as I move through the day, anything that I experience that is not that energy is an indicator to me that it's somebody else's, especially if it comes out of the blue. Nothing happened and I immediately start to feel anger. Nothing happened and I immediately start to get a headache. That is my indicator, if it comes out of the blue, that that belongs to someone else. And then my next thought, ideally, if I'm wishing to be highly enlightened in that moment, I will remember that I am empathically feeling someone else's energy. So high levels of discernment of what's mine compared to what's not mine. Taking a moment every day to tap into that core essence vibration. And when I feel that empathic sensitivity coming from another person, that's my indicator that I have information for them. My body has information for them. My team has information for them. And so I take a moment, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, to just hold a gentle awareness and make a request that my higher self, my body deva's higher self and my team, send appropriate energetic information to whomever I'm feeling, whether I know it or not. Sometimes I know it, sometimes I don't. Send whatever energetic information that I'm holding for that individual to them where they have the capacity to receive it. I also want to check if it's somebody that I think might be close to me, like a friend or family or my partner. That means that I might be also carrying responsibility for shifting their reality, and that is not my job. When we get attached to carrying an energy or shifting or healing an energy for someone, then we're going to move into higher levels of empathic sensitivity. So before I go and visit family, I get really clear in my heart that I am not responsible for shifting their stuff. That is their job. I'll send them information, I'll model right energy, but that's as far as I'll go. And so then the empathic sensitivity decreases. But people that we are close to, we will be more prone to want to take responsibility for them, which then moves us into higher levels of empathic sensitivity. The body deva can also get kind of confused with family, because the body deva is perceiving that that family is almost itself. A lot of the times parents will kind of own children and think that the children are theirs. And so that ownership creates this perception that the body deva is owned by the parents, and then the body deva starts perceiving itself more as the parent, like the parent's body deva, and those boundaries get really fuzzy. And so the body deva gets confused about whether or not this is truly its issue or someone else's. So I invite you to kind of use those same techniques if they resonate for you. Okay. Just making sure that I'm recording everything. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of keep flipping through the energy questions. When I had my enlightenment experience in 2001, my consciousness shifted in 30 seconds, and it took me 5 years to integrate that shift in consciousness. And it's still a daily process of remembering where I'm from and feeling my angelic family on the other side. And in that enlightenment process that I had in 2001, it was very clear that I came from the planet Sirius. And on Sirius, there's whales, there's dolphins, there's sacred temples. I have a whole family there. And I go and visit them in dream time. A lot of the times when I'm menstruating, my body's menstruating, I will take that time every single night during my menstrual cycle to go up to Sirius and reboot, reactivate. Sometimes I forget to go sleep on Sirius, but a lot of the times, especially if I'm feeling a little bit homesick or I'm feeling kind of flat or I'm feeling like I'm forgetting, I will take my dream time and I will use my dream time to basically access the higher dimensions, to go to this other world that feels very comforting, very safe, and it reminds me of who I am and where I came from. I will also sit in sacred council with my teachers up on Sirius, and we'll be in the temple and we'll talk about things. Usually when we're in that council or that lesson, I will receive information more at a vibrational frequency, so I'll feel it in my body while I'm holding my awareness there. I'll feel it around my energy fields. I might feel it in my chakra systems as it's reflecting from that higher world, higher realm down to me here. So I'm holding my awareness simultaneously in two different dimensions, the physical dimension, but then I'm holding a little bit more awareness up on Sirius, and I typically won't do this when I'm driving. Sometimes I will, but I am holding, sort of a 50% awareness on the road and 50% awareness of the information that's being relayed in the higher realms. And so with that, I sit with my teachers, they remind me, they advise me, and for me, I prepared for this incarnation for 1,800 years, and then my memory gets a little bit blurry. So it was tons of prep, and I was actually just having a conversation with my guides the other day, and they said, Aleya, of course you feel like you're under pressure. You prepared for this incarnation that's going to be like 60, 70, 80 years, if I'm lucky. I actually thought after my enlightenment experience it would just be another 20, but I think I might extend my visit. You spent 1,800 years preparing for 60, 70, 80 years. That is a lot of prep for a very short period of time. So there is a certain amount of pressure that I do feel to get some tools out to help the consciousness. And I also realize that a lot of the tools that I might be presenting, that only a small handful are really resonating with it at this time. And I actually see those tools possibly being used 200 years from now, 300 years from now, when the consciousness really starts to awaken and have kind of more of a taste bud for this information and these concepts. So if it resonates with you, know that you are on kind of more of a front wave, and we want to hold humility and compassion, not go into arrogance around that, but I also don't get really attached to humanity getting it at this point in time, because this is a slow process of evolution. I trained on Sirius for this mission. I also trained on other planets preparing for this mission, this job. Before I got here into this world, one of the things that I did to prepare was for about 300 to 400 years Earth time, I worked on the other side. And what I call the other side is, it was really more a transfer station or a platform or a debrief room. And so I helped souls debrief from their incarnation on planet Earth, and then I helped souls prepare for their incarnation. I was part of a counseling group, essentially. And so I was basically an angelic therapist sitting with people for years and years Earth time. In the higher realms time, you don't experience it the same as you do when you're in the physical realm. And we would just hold counsel, and we would ask questions and help people unpack their incarnation and activate the vibrations of what their soul was truly intending on learning. And so it's kind of interesting that now I'm in the physical realm and I'm doing the exact same thing. We're just doing it mid-life. Most of the time we do this level of work of using the higher self, the energetic fields, the higher dimensions, because you're on the other side. You're accessing your light body. You are accessing these higher dimensional aspects of you. And those are the aspects of you that actually have the capacity to do this work, to activate very particular vibrations in your soul essence energy, in that divine line. And so some people find this work a little bit disorienting, because it's almost like, whoa, this is what we do when we're dead, when we're on the other side. And I find the word dead so interesting, because for me, the other side is actually more real than this world. This world sort of has this fuzzy, filmy, distorted, dreamlike energy to it. And it's slower, it's harder to shift the vibrations, whereas when you're on the other side, it's a much faster experience to shift the energy because you're not dealing with the density of the physical dimension. So I'm just kind of clipping through the questions. And I do remember who I was before I got here. I was actually in male form. And I wasn't as funny as I am now. Okay, I'm going to stick to my list. When I was on Sirius, somebody's asking what was my life like, and it's a very etheric experience. You kind of have a body, but it's more etheric. It's not as dense as the physical form. And we have etheric temples, we have community, we're very conscious with the planet, and so we're working with the planet to help it stabilize all of its cycles, all of its functions, so there's really no drought, there's no famine, we don't really have to eat. We eat more sound, you know, it's this liquid sound vibration that is nourishing to the soul. And Sirius, from my recollection, was all about training for me, training and studying high vibrations of consciousness. It was really, for me, it was almost like a PhD course in consciousness and what happens when certain souls hold a particular consciousness, and then how can they embody higher states of consciousness, and what is it they're truly intending on learning, and then taking that and using those skill sets of what I studied on Sirius on the transfer station, the debrief room. So it was just lots of study about consciousness, emotions, and how we express ourselves as beams of light, the creative energy. So it was a lovely reality, and some of my greatest teachers on Sirius are the whales and the dolphins, and they will actually allow you to kind of walk into them and experience their reality. They have such a high vibration on Sirius, and there's this really beautiful lake that I would go and sit by, and the lake would it's sort of the size of an ocean on Earth, but it's been filled with the whale energy for so long that the water sings the song of the whale. And so you just sort of hear this magical sound emanating from the water there. And the water there is more etheric. It's being held in a higher dimension. So if we got in a spaceship and we went and traveled to Sirius and we looked at the planet Sirius, we would just see sort of this lump of nothingness. But it's because the consciousness that exists on Sirius, and also the Pleiades and Venus and Mars, they're actually existing in a higher dimensional plane that when we're in the physical dimension, we don't have the capacity to perceive. Okay. Hopefully this is interesting to all of you. Someone asked the question, is your higher self from Sirius? And my soul, one of the most recent place that I call home is Sirius. And so the soul travels, and I think of the soul as an expression of the essence. The higher self is an expression of the essence. And so is my higher self from Sirius? Well, I am one and the same. And so yes, all aspects of me are from Sirius, but in truth, if we really wanted to be detail, we are all from the heart of Source. We are all teeny tiny little sparks experiencing reality in the heart of Source right now, running lines of light, reflecting lines of light, and we are holding our awareness at certain points on those lines, and that is creating the conscious experience. And so the journey is really, how are we going to choose to reflect and radiate the light that we hold in the heart of Source in whatever form, whatever planet, whatever dimension we are currently perceiving. What was your life like? Just looking here. Dolphins are not horses. Oh, you said there were dolphins. Are there horses? Not that I recall. There's another question of what do I eat to keep healthy, young, no wrinkles, and what moisturizer do I use? I love food that does not have additives in it, that does not have pesticides, chemicals, or GMOs. I can feel the vibrations of those foods, and I can actually feel them messing with my brain chemistry, and I can feel my liver getting kind of heavy and sluggish if I consume foods that have lower vibrations that were prepared in a hasty manner in a dirty environment energetically. And so I do eat at home a lot. Sometimes I will go out, but I do prefer to have my husband cook me wonderful meals. He's an amazing chef. And I love doing smoothies for breakfast because I don't like something really heavy, or I'll do eggs and vegetables for breakfast. I occasionally like a piece of toast. I know that gluten isn't that great for you, but my body doesn't react too much to that. And so whenever we are deciding what we're going to eat, we want to watch how our body reacts and responds to different foods. And then I love veggies, and I actually do eat protein. I have gone through cycles at different points in time of not eating protein, but right now I'm at a phase where my body is wanting protein, and so I'm honoring that and listening to it. And I always try to choose organic free-range meat if I'm going to eat meat. So I love clean, high vibrational water, and I use a little device called the BioPro. No, it's iWater. I can't remember. It's this blue device that actually emits sound and frequency into the water, and it activates the life force of the water. It's a little pricey, so instead what you could do is you could just take your water, put it in a glass jar, and put it in the window or put it outside and let it receive the light from the sun. You can also buy a device that kind of spins it and activates the vibration of it. I actually saw a faucet once that was like in a spiral, and so whenever it goes in that spiral, it's actually activating the life force of the water. I love the supplement Cell Food. I put a little bit of Cell Food in my water. Some people might react to that negatively. Some people might love it. It's a little pricey. In my secret back pocket, I have a practitioner that uses a healing device and does distant treatments on me all year long to help keep my microbes in balance. And he's pretty pricey, but for me it's worth it, especially with the level of work that I'm doing and dealing with people that are pretty seriously ill and the high levels of empathic sensitivity. I want my body to be constantly being repatterned, reprogrammed to remember its original blueprint. And so I take that extra help just because I'm working so intensely. If I wasn't working that hard, I probably wouldn't utilize that device. And then I also do a supplement called Drops of Life, and I actually just put that as a link on my website. Again, that's a little pricey. It's about $150 for a 6-week supply, but it helps the pineal gland secrete transditropin, which then slows the aging process. And my husband's been using it for almost 20 years. It boosts the immune system, it boosts the energy levels, boosts sex drive, helps muscle tone. And I noticed that when I don't do the transditropin, or Drops of Life is what it's now called, because the FDA had a little freak out because, I don't know, they were abundant and people were actually using the supplement. When I don't use it, I can tell that my skin gets a little bit more, it gets a little bit more dry. I'm 42 right now, and I don't know if I look 42. I don't really think about age the way that maybe most people think about age, because I have recollection of about 1800 years, and so for me it's just sort of this continual process, and I'm currently in a human body having an experience. So water is essential. There might be other things that I do for my body that I'll think about and speak to as we go through the conversation. I would love to hear more about feeling the shifts when you do the protocols. I mean, when I ask for an activation, empowerment, self-control, I think I'm feeling the shift, but is there a way to be sure? Sure, anytime we're doing a protocol, an energetic protocol about something, before we do the protocol, we actually want to check how we are feeling emotionally. What's our emotional reaction? What are our thought forms about it? Are we still feeling a little obsessive or upset or angry? And then we do the protocol. We wait for 30 seconds, a minute. You might feel a little shift in your energy fields. And then check in with your emotions and your thoughts. And so as we're spiritually evolving, we ideally are becoming also more self-aware about what's going on inside of us, what our thought forms are, what our reaction is, what our emotions are. If we're not aware of our thoughts and our emotions, it's going to be really difficult to be able to discern if there was a shift. So an exercise that you could do is every hour or 3 times a day, how am I feeling? How am I doing? What's going on? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And I actually don't try. I live a very, very quiet life. Occasionally I'll watch a TV episode if I'm feeling totally exhausted and I just need a total decompression escape. That's my worst habit, is I occasionally watch TV episodes, maybe once a month. But other than that, I don't watch the news. I don't listen to the radio. I don't read the newspaper. I don't really read magazines. I live in this little bubble. And I know that that's not going to work for a lot of people. But 5 years ago, when I started doing the daily cups, I felt in my heart this desire. I also felt from the guides that work with me in the higher realms that I needed to go into this sterile bubble. And my mother gets slightly frustrated about that, and so she'll call me and she'll say, "Did you know Obama was elected?" I'll say, "Yeah, I got that." So I watch the big headlines, and my husband will occasionally tell me the big headlines so that I'm not totally clueless. But my passion is really watching the energy that's coming onto the planet and how can we use that energy to help us shift our vibration. And so after 5 years of living in this fairly sterile bubble, I actually got confirmation the other day when my book agent, Deborah Jacobs, called me up and said, "Aleya, they want you," meaning New World Library. And so I just got New World Library signed a contract with me for my first book called Cups of Consciousness. And the feedback I got from the founders of New World Library they said, "This is the first new stuff we've seen in 27 years. Now, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but when I heard that statement, I immediately then reflected upon how I live in this kind of sterile energetic bubble, and I don't lift my head up and I don't look at what other people are doing. And it's not that that work isn't important, but by allowing myself to completely and totally focus on how I perceive energy, it has enabled me to come up with my very own unique terms that might have a little bit more of a fresh vibration to them, and confirmation that that it resonates for people. And so I sort of did a little pat on the back, because there were definitely moments of, oh, I should be reading the newspaper, I should be reading books, I should be studying other people's work, I should be learning new techniques, all of my shoulds. And when that happened, I just kind of let that go. So I still am living in this very sterile bubble and working on the book and keeping my head down. And that doesn't mean I don't appreciate it when people when people send me links about different information of things that are happening on the planet. I appreciate that. I might look at it, I might not. It just depends on what feels appropriate in the moment. Oh, what moisturizer do I use? Just in the last few weeks, I was actually working with a woman named Joan Powell, and she had some really great moisturizers. And then I ran out of them, and I went to Whole Foods, and I bought John Masters pomegranate oil. And then I also have this facial mask that is like an aromatherapy facial mask that has the hydraulic acid in it, and it takes the moisture out of the air and out of the oils, and it just sort of like soaks it in the skin. So for the last 3 weeks, if people have noticed a difference in my skin, I don't really notice it that much, but John Masters pomegranate oil, and then I want to call it aromatherapy hydraulic face mask. If people are interested about that, ask me on Facebook, and I will go and look at the bottle and Facebook it. Little segue there. Okay. How did I develop my senses? Does it ever turn off? And how do you live in your 3D life and remain in the higher realms? After that enlightenment experience that happened when I was lying on a sound table, all of my senses came on. I was able to perceive the other realms, hear the angelic realms, and I had been meditating for years before that, but had been sort of like hoping for an enlightenment moment and got it. And so how did I get it? I can't tell you exactly how that happened, but when I'm doing the daily meditations, I am always focused on how can I help souls move into a more connected state in their divine line. Because for me, when I move into that river of light, that divine line on the front of my spine, when I have my body deva, nature spirit, bring all of its awareness to its divine line in the spine, what I find is my awareness and my clarity increases. And then I also invite the team to move into their own inner channels. It's like their inner currents of clarity. And then we start perceiving more clearly. We start being able to access information in these higher realms. And when you really give responsibility over to your higher self and your energy fields to gather information and process it up high, and then reflect it down to you here, then your senses also increase. So those daily meditations are really designed, as well as the tall cups, are really designed to help people slowly and gently awaken. Because how do we control an instantaneous moment of enlightenment? I guess some people try to. I actually bought a God helmet that's hooked up to a computer, and it's like a biofeedback machine, and then I bought this other device. I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago when I was chasing the enlightenment tail. And I didn't really feel any major shifts with those, but there's some people that have amazing experiences with Edgar Cayce's, it's like a soul cylinder. I can't remember exactly what it's called. And then there's this thing called the God helmet. And again, I haven't had huge experiences, market experiences with those, but everyone's different in terms of what might resonate for them. And then there's biofeedback, there's the hemisync, there's so many different techniques out there. And it's really about finding the techniques that resonate for you. For me, my angle is really about helping people shift their consciousness to a more evolved way of being. And there's this whole phenomenon of chasing the cities. And cities are the ability to instantaneously manifest, instantaneously heal, bilocate, teleport, telekinesis, being clairvoyant. Those are all the side effects of when we start to hold higher vibrations. But I have come across a few people that have these cities, these great capacities, but there's an arrogance to them, or there's an impatience to them, or there's an anger to them. And so for me, I would rather have cultivated compassion and a deep divine connection and love and respect and gentleness and grace over being able to instantaneously bilocate from one location to another. That would be cool. It would be convenient, especially for air traffic, air miles, the cost of travel. But for me, my soul really values more of a higher consciousness. And so that's what I'm focusing on cultivating inside myself, and then also with all of the work that I'm putting out into the world. How do I live in a 3D life and remain in the higher realms? Well, I do sessions a lot of the time. So I will do 3 to 5 sessions, 3 to 5 days a week. And so in those sessions, it's an hour to 2 hours of me having my eyes closed and looking and perceiving the higher realms. And then if I'm not in session, I'm either gardening, sleeping, recording a meditation, so looking in the higher realms, in the sound studio recording music or editing music. I don't socialize a lot. I really don't have a very big social circle. There's lots of people that I love and I consider friends, but I don't spend a whole lot of time socializing. And I just really understand that right now, at this point in time in my life is about service as opposed to being in a social community. And so I'm just surrendering to that and honoring where I am right now. And maybe it'll be that way for 5 years, 10 years, maybe the rest of my life, but I'm just going with the current of the way it is. And so by taking that much time in nature and being quiet and being still and not having a whole lot of interaction with anyone other than Freckles and my dog, and then in sessions with people, but again, that's in session in a healing circumstance. And a lot of my work now is over the phone because the energy is getting so intense that to be in person is not as efficient. And so it's just a very quiet life, and so it's pretty easy to hold a higher vibration. And then I use my tools. If I start to slip down, I'll take salt baths, I'll swim, I exercise, I go for walks. Really connecting in with nature is one of the fastest and easiest ways to bring my energy back up. I'll sleep. I will go into what some would perhaps call a depression. if they were looking at me, where I just would sort of like sit around and look at the trees and look at the sky and not do anything. That might happen for 6 hours in a day. Sometimes it might happen for a whole day or 2 days, where I just sort of lie in bed or lie in a chair, sit in a chair, and don't do anything. And that's when I'm doing a major, major reboot. And I'm not super happy, but I'm not that sad. But there is a kind of a depressed, and that depression kind of pushes me in for that reboot. And I'm learning slowly to not judge it and to put my should list on pause. And sometimes if that's happening to me, I can't record a meditation for Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. I try to do the new ones on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if it's Tuesday and I'm having one of those days and I'm not in session with people, I just surrender and I say, okay, I'm just going to use a repeat from the library guides. What do I do? And they'll actually tell me the day. February 7th, 2011, and I go to it and I'm like, whoa, that works. So trying to honor my process of what I need. I'm really talking about myself a lot tonight. Hopefully it's helpful. Okay, when you call forth the sacred shapes, holograms, and mandalas, are there universal ones that we will see and recognize? I've gotten a sense of a hologram a few times, but not consistently. Are these something we will see in our mind's eye or be engulfed with or just sense? For me, I just sense them. I don't go into detail in that section so much. I used to, and then I would see like a sacred orb or a square or a pyramid spinning around me. And so every single shape actually has a different quality to it. But when we are bringing in those sacred geometric shapes and those holograms for a specific meditation, I'm really inviting the higher self, your body deva's higher self, your team's higher self, to bring in the sacred shapes that are appropriate for you. Which is, I think, why a lot of the meditations resonate for people, is because every single person is bringing in their very own unique shape that they need, hologram that they need for where they are right now today in regards to the energy, in regards to the process that they're going through. So I think it changes daily, and I think it changes depending on the individual. And some people may see them, some people might feel them, some people might hear them. They might be making a particular sound. Can I elaborate about dream time, and is this actually where we dream? I think of dream time as actually another dimension that we are accessing and having an experience. We're relaying information, we are sending information, we're receiving information, we might be doing healing work. I will have a lot of what I call shamanic dreams, where I am literally dreaming another person's dream. That just happened last night, and it was not a pleasant dream, and it gave me a ton of information about the deepest wound of that person. And so at 4 a.m. I woke up and I was like thick in the dream, and all the emotions of the dream, and literally feeling this person's emotions of what would happen as if they were my own. And I thought about, okay, who am I working with today? Or, in a few hours. And I thought, oh, that's her dream. And so it really gave me a lot of insight about how to then help her in her session. And so that will happen for me a lot when I'm preparing to go into a retreat, a class, or into sessions with people. And so sometimes our dreams might not make sense because we're actually dreaming another person's dream that we're working with in the higher realms. So a dream is basically just your soul consciousness tapping into a different dimensional reality. Do I see or read energy in symbols? Sometimes, not so much. It's more information, and the more I do this work, the more I realize that my higher self is receiving the information. My higher self is the one, and my body deva's higher self and my team, they're the one that are digesting the information up high. So I really try to keep my mind out of the process until my higher self has digested it, until there's like a place of fullness and like a, It's funny, Freckles just sighed. And so when I feel that happening up high, then it starts to trickle in to the mind. But the mind is the last piece to look for the information. And so I really try to kind of surrender and not look for it at a mind level, but just let myself feel it way up high. And then I'll feel it down here. And then it's almost like a knowing on all senses. So that's a really great way to start accessing more information because our higher self has the capacity to process so much more information than our mind. Let's give it all to the higher self. Let it figure it out there. Let it sit in council with our spiritual advisors and then reflect it down to us here. And then the mind will know. Where are the sounds that I make coming from? So when I do the what I will do when I am bringing in a tone for a protocol or in a toning concert, I use my energetic ears, and it's almost like kind of tuning in and opening my energy ears to what I call the angelic choir. So the angelic choir is hanging out in a higher dimension, and I just turn on that radio station, and then I'm communicating with them at the level of my higher self, inviting them to start eliciting the tones that could shift this energy that is appropriate for the protocol. Same with the light language. The light language is a language that I use when I communicate with my guides. When I get startled, I actually go to light language before English. And so those tones that I'm making are literally coming from the angelic realm, and all I'm doing is basically doing a call and response where they're making a tone. I guess it's not call and response, and I'm mimicking the tone that I'm hearing that's happening in the higher realms. And so it's never just me toning, it's the angelic realm toning, and then I'm making their sound in the physical world as best I can. More about the radio channel. I actually learned this technique from a friend of mine, Deborah Jacobs, who's also my agent. She's a psychic reader. And I was getting totally overwhelmed with empathic sensitivity 8, 9, 10 years ago, like 10 years ago. And I was just always feeling everybody's stuff. And it was before I realized that I shouldn't be attached to other people's journey. It was before I realized that I had information to send people. It was before I knew how to hold appropriate boundaries, have discernment. I was just a mess. And she said, imagine a radio dial, and you turn the radio dial on to listen, and you turn it off when you just want to be in your own sound. And so I took that concept, and then I cultivated it and started to use an additional technique of then turning the sound of my essence up, so that the sound of my essence is the loudest sound I'm hearing. So when I go to the grocery store, I'm inviting my higher self to activate the sound of my essence really loudly so that I can't hear other people's sounds. Because when I go into the grocery store, I just might want to go into the grocery store. I might not want to do grid work. I might not want to be picking up on everybody else's stuff. And so I'm really inviting me, Soul Essence Aleya, my body, Diva Nature Spirit, my team, to all be listening to their own inner sound only, no one else. And so it's literally like turning in and listening to that sweet, lovely essence sound, and not taking responsibility for shifting or changing, not judging. When we go into judgment, we'll also go into empathic sensitivity. And then I can go into a grocery store without feeling other people's suffering or pain or thoughts or emotions. I know light language from the other side. I didn't forget it when I came here. Dolphins are on Sirius. Does technology interfere with signals from the other realms, planets, galaxies? I do think that electrical magnetic frequency can wreak a little bit of havoc, especially if we're in a city where there's a ton of electrical magnetic frequencies. So I think it can negatively impact us, especially energetically. And so to have EMF protectors, copper coils, a strong body, a strong endocrine system, some technique that clears your energy fields. Crystals can be really great protectors for the electrical magnetic field. How do I transmit my energy physically to catalyze others? I don't. I use the other dimensions, and I'm never doing anything to anyone. I'm bringing my awareness up to my higher self. I'm perceiving from that place, almost like an elevator. So I bring my awareness into my divine line. I travel up my divine line, and then I allow for those doors at the penthouse higher self level open. I stay in the elevator shaft. I never leave my column of light. And then I invite my higher self to receive whatever energetic information of whomever it is I'm working with. So my higher self gets the information if I haven't already gotten it empathically at a physical body level, or heard it, felt it. And then as my higher self receives that information, I then ponder it with their higher self, their guides, their spiritual advisors, and we ask the question, what's really being asked here? What's the soul really trying to learn? What's the vibration they're really after? And after pondering that, I then send the information of, oh, you might want to bring your reference points for self-love off of ... We'll bring in the protocol. And so I'm sending that information, and then I'm holding a container in a space for their higher self to shift them. And I'm just watching. So I'm never doing anything to anybody other than sending information. And then inside myself, I will be modeling the energy. And then that creates a strong, coherent field of transformation, whether they're in Australia or 5 feet away. And so I suppose if at a physical level, what do I do to transmit? I'm just holding that strong empathic field, coherent field that then creates a positive empathic experience, hopefully. Good. We'll just do a couple more questions. There was a question about a daily cup that came through a few weeks ago about what do you mean when you say allow for the issue to surface? And so when I say allow for the issue to surface, what I'm really speaking about is allow yourself to become aware of what's going on inside you. What are the emotions? What are the thoughts? And as you ponder whatever the trigger is, whatever the upset is, whatever it is you're wanting to shift, what you do is you ask yourself, what is your soul really intending on mastering? And I created a thing called the Flip It chart that helps you determine what it is your soul is really working on mastering. So if I'm in a place of lack, what I'm really attempting to master is abundance. If I'm in a place of sadness, my soul is really wanting to activate the vibration of happiness deep in my core. And so when we allow it to surface, we're bringing it into a conscious awareness, we're pondering it, and then the question goes on, I'm confused. When I surface, I seem to rehash the issue. Yeah, you're actually just looking for the root of what it is your soul is attempting to master by identifying the negative and then asking what's the solution. As soon as you identify the solution of what it is you're intending, then you invite your higher self to activate the vibration of that solution. Same for your body and your team. And then you sit like a bump on a log. You wait for your higher self to do the work and then trickle it down to you here in this realm. Good. There's another question, was wondering, when we die, I assume that we become our higher self. Then is it the higher self, our soul, that is in the higher realm and after making agreements? So the higher self is actually more what I would call the light body, and it holds our current level of consciousness. So when you die, you're not moving to a higher state of consciousness than where you are right now. Some of the veils might come off, but the level of compassion that you've cultivated, the level of self-love that you've cultivated in this incarnation is kind of where you start when you get over to the other side. But then you go through a whole debrief, hopefully, and you start to look at every single incident, every single moment, and then you're basically milking it, and you're activating the vibration of all of those incidences, all of those challenges. So the incarnation is really here to help you have lots of experiences, and I personally prefer to unpack all of the stuff during the trip instead of having to unpack it at the end of the journey. So it's sort of like doing your laundry while you're on the trip instead of waiting for all of your laundry to accumulate, and then you have these huge loads, and that's fine, you know, it just takes a while, but hey, what's time? We've got endless amounts of time. And I think of the journey in this world as, at least the journey that I prefer, is a more conscious journey of why did I just react to that situation? What is it my soul is really intending on mastering? Just the other day, I taught a class at New Thought, and someone came up to me at the end of the class and they said, wow, your toning is absolutely beautiful, but you're really wordy. And I said, wordy? Okay. And I took a little offense, and then today as I was driving into town to go work out with my trainer, I thought, why did I take offense to that? What was really going on, and how could I have reacted and responded in a way that would be more gracious And I reacted and I said, well, don't you love the disparity between the toning and the talking? And that was my response. But emotionally, I had a little moment. And so I was unpacking it and looking at it and thought, well, what would happen if I had actually dropped into my heart and asked him, so is it that it creates confusion? What's going on inside your heart? And I wouldn't ask him, I would empathically intuit and does that create frustration for you? And so I would use the tools out of the toolbox that my husband and I created. And Doug Knoll actually my husband has a 2-hour course on how to empathically listen and clearly listen without taking offense. And it's an invaluable tool. It's called Pure Magic. It's Pure Magic, Negotiate a Centered Life. So for anybody that wants to respond to people's comments in a little bit more of an enlightened, non-reactive way, take the course. It's $9.99. Sorry to plug my husband, but oh my God, I use those tools all the time. And so I was just looking at that and unpacking it in the moment so that as we go through life, the situations, the moments, they don't kind of build up on each other and then we're really reactive. So if we unpack, we decrease our reactivity. The other very clear distinction that I make, which might be very upsetting to some people, is that I perceive that we are all the divine energy, every single one of us, and that every single one of us has a spark in the heart of Source, the heart of God, the heart of the universe. And these little sparks in the heart of Source, where we reside, is our primary base camp. And we are, from those sparks, creating these lines of light. And those lines are traveling through multiple dimensions, multiple forms, and we are having experiences literally reflecting our lines of light. And so to say that there is some external God creating our reality for us or judging us or creating our life actually takes us out of power. And it almost could create a victim vibration. When we move into our divine line, that river of light on the front of the spine, whatever you want to call it, we then start to connect with that spark that is expressing itself from the heart of Source. We are the Source energy, having this amazing experience, and then we start to be able to use our free will and choice more and create what we're really truly intending. Good. My husband's website, I'm just going to answer a couple other questions. My husband's website is It's Pure Magic or Negotiate a Centered Life, and I'll grab the link at the end too and share that with you all. There's just a couple more questions. When I go to the grocery store, who makes the decisions as to what to buy? You or your body deva? Are the two of you on the same page all the time? Actually, when I go to the grocery store and I'm having a conscious grocery store experience, I will hold a gentle awareness that my higher self, my body deva's higher self, and my team are all having a conscious conversation in a higher realm talking about what to buy that will support everybody's greatest happiness. And I actually had a really interesting experience the other day. I was in the grocery store and I walked by a woman and, excuse me, and I had the thought of cookies. Buy cookies. And I thought, that's weird. I don't normally buy cookies when I go to the grocery store, but it was a really strong thought and it actually had a little bit of an empathic kick. And I thought, I bet you this is not mine. I bet you that's that woman that I just walked by. But I was entertaining it, and so I went to the cookie aisle. And I'm standing in the cookie aisle, and who walks by but the woman that walked by me the moment I had the cookie thought. And so I'm standing there looking at the cookies, and she's standing there looking at the cookies, and she grabs the bag of cookies. And as soon as she grabbed the bag of cookies and walked away, my desire for cookies went away. While she was standing looking at the cookies, I did invite my higher self, my body deva's higher self, and my team to send appropriate energetic information to her at the level of her higher self where she was willing to receive it or able to receive it or wanted to receive it. And then as I sent that information, I could feel my desire for the cookies going away. And so I am pretty conscious and aware of making sure that I don't pick up other people's desires when I'm in the grocery store. But there is a conversation happening at the higher realms. And so the body deva will sometimes want something and I'll say, body deva, why do you really want that? Are you looking for sweets externally, or are you looking for nourishing externally? What would happen if you found that in your own divine line? So it's a gentle, compassionate process of helping the body deva find its resources internally instead of on the food. But that doesn't mean that I never eat cookies or ice cream or chocolate. I occasionally do, but I try to keep it in balance. I am going to be doing a retreat this November, November 7th, 8th, and 9th, just north of Santa Cruz, in person. And I'm really inviting people that have been using the daily cups, the tall cups, doing one-on-one sessions with me for some time. Ideally at least 3 to 6 months, but ideally years. A year, 2 years, 3 years, to come to the retreat. The retreat really isn't for people who are just brand new to this. It's too much. It's not going to be a ton of fun. And so if you do want to attend a retreat and you just started using my stuff, I do teach retreats once a year, sometimes twice a year. But this year, 2014, we're going to be doing one the 7th, 8th, and 9th. And I just configured that product on the website. And it's the deep dive with Aleya this fall, winter. So feel free to come if you have been familiar with this work for some time and using the tools. I'm just checking to see if there's any other questions. I'm so glad that the daily cups are always spot on. It's a lot of work. I love doing it, but it's a lot of work. Okay. Do I recognize people's souls from former lives, incarnations in this lifetime? I do. A lot of the people that I work with, maybe even some of the subscribers that, some subscribers that I don't personally know or haven't met in the physical realm, I've actually helped prep on the other side and helped decompress. So I might have been one of the therapists that was working with you before you incarnated here into this world, or in your last incarnation when you were doing your debrief, because I was there for a wee bit of time. So if there's a familiarity, I do find that people that I have worked with on the other side in between their lives might resonate more with the work. And it's not my work. This is the work that we do when we're on the other side, when we're the therapist, the angelic realm. Not everybody. There are different kind of debrief process stations, and every station uses a slightly different technique. And so the station that I come from, we use these techniques that I'm using in the daily meditations, the Cups of Consciousness concepts. So I'm going to be writing that book, Cups of Consciousness, and it's going to be the 7 concepts that I use. They were called the 7 principles, the 7 gateways. They're going through another little transformation, but basically it's the same 7 concepts. And there is a 7-hour video course that talks about these concepts. I think it's called the 7 gateways, that's available on my website if people want to know more about those 7 concepts that can help you shift your life in the way in which you're intending. Good. There's such great questions. I think that we're going to be completing here just because of timing. Email me if you do want the name of the practitioner that I use who has a healing device. And there was one more. That was it. Just checking here. Oh yeah, there's one more question that I'll speak to, and that is disappointment and negativity. So if we have disappointment, that's an indicator that we placed our expectations externally on a situation. And we're also asking that outer energy or individual to meet some needs that are actually not their job to meet. And my whole angle is about meeting our needs internally. And so if I want to be respected by somebody, I'm not going to place the expectation that they're going to respect me. Actually, that's not their job. I'm going to hold all of those vibrations, responsibilities for respecting myself and my own core. And then if they respect me, they respect me. If they don't, they don't. If they do, they are reflecting to me my own internal reality. If they don't, it's probably because they don't respect themselves. So we always want to, before we even enter into a situation, we want to ask ourselves, what are our expectations of this situation? What would happen if we didn't have any expectations? If we just come in with our hearts open and to ourselves, loving ourselves, meeting all of our own needs, connecting at the level of our higher selves, and creating a really healthy grid that can then reflect down to us here in the physical realm. So really start using the higher self more and more to set up the energy of your day, of your grocery store visit, of the meeting, of the family time. Invite the higher self to connect with everybody at the level of their higher selves to start sending appropriate energetic information, ironing all the kinks out in the higher realms, and then reflecting a really healthy co-creative way of being down to you here in this physical realm. It has been wonderful to spend this hour connecting with you and answering these questions. I hope that they were interesting and useful. And if you do feel served by the work, feel free to give a love donation online. And we will be doing a Tall Cups next Saturday, Saturday the 21st. Summer begins, at least in the Western Hemisphere. So feel free to join me at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday the 21st of June. And the next conscious conversation that is free, they're always free. The Tall Cups are $15 or $18 depending. When is the next conscious conversation? It is going to be July 23rd at 7 p.m. So feel free to tune in then. And if you feel like you do need additional support or guidance in your life, feel free to check out subscribing to the Daily Cups. I do them 5 days a week. I do record new ones Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I tune into the energy on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I pull something from the archive that has about 1,100 meditations now that feels appropriate because they're so yummy. How can we use them just once? Thank you again, everybody. Many blessings and have a great evening.